Science has, in many ways, helped ease the suffering of this pandemic, which was more than likely caused by science.
All right, welcome to Cwic Show. We are going to talk about Dr. Fauci. I don't think I've ever done this before. I'm not going to take an angle that you expect me to be taking on this. Dr. Fauci is a lightning rod. He's a lot like Trump, right? You either love him or you hate him. You're either in one camp or the other. It is amazing to me what is happening in the United States, where everything is becoming politicized. You are preaching to the choir. You surround yourself with the same group of people. And Fauci has now become kind of that new lightning rod. And you can tell someone's politics practically by whether you support Fauci or whether you want him fired. It's one team against the other. Now, my take on this with Fauci is not about politics, not in the sense of on the left or the right or the Republicans or the Democrats. It's something that I think is just as important, perhaps even more important. And Fauci is mixed up right in the middle of it. And that has to do with the Wuhan Lab. Now, it's not my purpose in this episode. Maybe I'll do this at another time. Would like to do this at another time. But it's not my purpose in this episode to go over whether or not and to show the evidence, right, of whether or not the lab leak theory is viable. I believe that it is the most likely scenario there is, that COVID-19 came from the Wuhan virology lab. From very early on, if I had to bet my house on it, I had to make a decision on this, that's where I would put my money.
Science has, in many ways, helped ease the suffering of this pandemic, which was more than likely caused by science.
Okay, I think he's exactly right, and he's going to follow up and say that exact thing, that it's science, more than likely the lab, that is where this comes from. I think he's right.
If there was evidence, I'd love to hear it.
There's a novel respiratory coronavirus overtaking Wuhan, China. What do we do? Oh, you know who we could ask? The Wuhan novel respiratory coronavirus lab. The disease is the same name as the lab. That's just a little too weird, don't you think?
All right, so this is a man on the left, a classical liberal. How about somebody who is a libertarian or someone who leans right?
The preponderance of evidence now points towards this coming from the lab, and what you've done is change the definition on your website to try to cover your...
All right, we stopped the clip there right before we got to some non-family type of language there. But look, my point again here, I'm not showing you any evidence. My point here is that this is a real viable problem and a real viable theory of where this comes from. And I think that you have to lean that way. It is likely that the coronavirus, that COVID-19 comes from the Wuhan lab. This lab has the largest population of coronavirus bats in the world. So why is this important? What does this have to do with Fauci? Well, of course, Fauci has been involved with the funding through NIH of the Wuhan lab. So this creates a massive conflict of interest. It's a massive problem of doubt. You don't find this anywhere else except for in government. Can you imagine any company, if this was, say, for example, a pharmaceutical company that was trying to sell the vaccines, and Fauci was involved with the Wuhan lab that caused the problem in the first place, do you think they're going to parade out Dr. Fauci as the spokesperson for this? Let's say you had McDonald's as an example, that you had a new spokesperson who was a celebrity, and that celebrity a couple years ago had a video taken that went viral that had the celebrity involved with PETA. And they were, throwing buckets of red paint onto employees who were going into a cattle slaughterhouse where McDonald's sourced a lot of its beef. And then you find out that they're still involved with PETA. That's probably not the best spokesperson to bring in for McDonald's. The difference with the U.S. government is that the citizens of the U.S. cannot say, you know what, I don't like what's going on here. I'm going to withhold my taxes from you. Whereas with a company, you have consumers that say, I am not buying there. And a bad name is a big issue. All the U.S. government cares about is politics. And that can become an issue. But the immediate pressure of monetary responsibility does not exist with the government. They know they're going to get your tax dollars one way or the other. But in a lightning rod environment that we have politically with the vaccine and with COVID-19, why in the world do you bring out as one of your major spokespersons, regardless of what their background is, regardless of their competence, why do you parade out someone who has been funding the Wuhan Lab for what is, according to Senator Rand Paul anyway, gain of function research? Even if it wasn't, it doesn't matter. But all of these things, what do? They create more doubt. They stoke the fire of division. This is incredibly irresponsible. No company in the world would do the same thing that the U.S. government is doing here with Dr. Fauci. Once I found out personally that he was involved in funding the lab, it was over. Honestly, up until then, I loved what I heard from him. I really did. But once I heard that, it doesn't matter anymore. It's irresponsible to put him in that position. A judge that has any kind of involvement in a case or even indirectly an involvement with previous, perhaps even decisions or affiliations with organizations in the past will recuse themselves from certain cases. Dr. Fauci should recuse himself. And if he doesn't, the government should remove him from being a spokesperson for this. It is going to cause more problems. Why haven't they done this? Lastly is, who are you in bed with? Who are you funding? Why are we funding what is likely gain of function research for viruses that are not found in nature? Why are we doing this with the Chinese? I mean, you can see maybe, okay, we're doing this with the French, we're doing this with the English, with the Australians, or any of our allies. China does not have our well-being in mind. And are we improving their competence, their skill level, their understanding through our tax dollars of how to create an unnatural virus not currently found in nature that could be used as something as horrible as a bioweapon? Listen quickly to what Senator Rand Paul said that is going on right now at that Wuhan lab.
Why does it matter? Because gain-of-function research with laboratory-created viruses not found in nature could cause a pandemic even worse the next time. We're suffering today from one that has a mortality of approximately 1%. They're experimenting with viruses that have mortalities of between 15 and 50%.
Okay, I'm not sure about Senator Paul's choice for the guy standing up next to the sign. He's definitely no Vanna White. But I think that what he says is very true. Why would you go in and risk something like this? Why are we doing this with the Chinese? Who approves that? This, to me, is another strike against Dr. Fauci. And again, it has nothing to do with anything political. He may be the most competent guy there is. Why are you using him as a spokesperson? Someone who funded the Wuhan Lab for research, whether you call it gain of function or not, who funded the Wuhan Lab for research into viruses using coronavirus bats. And secondly, doing it with the Chinese. This is all bad news. And why aren't we talking about this more? The lab leak theory is the most likely scenario of the source of where this virus came from. Secondly, why are we doing this with the Chinese? look at where they may have gone to at this point. If Senator Paul is right on this, and they are now experimenting with a new virus that has a mortality rate of 15 to 50%, right? 15 to 50 times as lethal as COVID-19. Did we help them get there? Do we trust them with that? Did we as American citizens out working, laboring for our families, and the U.S. government taking our taxes, did those tax dollars go toward that purpose? This is my issue with Fauci. So as others are fighting on one side or the other and holding him up as a banner and an icon of science and caution, or wanting to throw him under the bus and have him fired because of statements, right? I understand both of those sides. I get it. But there are some other issues here that really need to be discussed more that have nothing to do with politics. And in the grander scheme of things, I think may end up being much more important.